For example, neither of the smoking pistol tapes that showed the president himself had ordered the cover-up was included. The transcripts had been sanitized, censored. Nothing remained that might have damaged him seriously. The true transcripts were making their way slowly into American public life. But on this night, an American president had told lies to the American people.
Abraham Lincoln said, "If the end brings me out all right, what is said against me won't amount to anything. If the end brings me out wrong, 10 angels swearing I was right would make no difference."
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no.
The Judiciary Committee voted articles of impeachment to send to the full House of Representatives. The powers of the courts and Congress had forced the tapes into the open, although at this time these people had not heard the smoking pistol tapes.
Aye.
Yet they had heard enough.
Mr. Brooks.
Aye.
Mr. Kastenmeier.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
The majority voted that Nixon warranted impeachment for his role in the cover-up, but there was more.
Mr. Conyers.
The charge was that he had abused the power of the presidency by engaging in conduct that violated the rights of citizens, interfered with investigations, and misused government agencies.
Aye.
He had done all this not for the good of the country, but for his own personal political advantage. If other presidents had violated the standards of presidential conduct, that was no excuse. The majority of the committee found evidence of repeated and continuing abuse of power, subversive of our constitutional government.
Mr. Rangel.
Aye.
Miss Jordan.
Aye.
Mr. Thornton.
Aye.
The bicentennial was almost 2 years away, but it was as if our founding fathers had come to the rescue of the 20th century.
Mr.
The
Frater.
Constitution that set up a system of checks and balances among the branches of government had been attacked by a president. But with this vote, the Constitution had defended itself and won the battle.
Mr. Ladin.
No.
Mr. Rodino.
Aye.
The Constitution of the United States worked.
Mr. Chairman.
Clerk will report.
27 members have voted aye. 11 members have voted no.
And pursuant to the resolution, Article 1, that resolution is adopted and will be reported to the House.
I have never been a quitter. To leave office before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body. But as president, I must put the interests of America first. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
August 9th, 1974. Now, like his subordinates, Richard Nixon could be brought to trial. A grand jury had named him as an unindicted co-conspirator. Nixon could have faced a prison sentence. There's no evidence that Richard Nixon ever made a deal with his second vice president. Gerald Ford had been one of Richard Nixon's strongest defenders. He drew away from him only in the last days when the evidence became stronger and stronger. Ford had enormous pressures on him. There may have been panic in Washington, but millions of Americans, no matter what the cost, still wanted to see equal justice under the law, even for an ex-president. Gerald Ford did a deed that some political analysts said cost him the presidency when he ran for election 2 years later.
I do believe that right makes might, and that if I am wrong, 10 angels swearing I was right would make no difference. Now, therefore, I, Gerald R. Ford, President of the United States, pursuant to the pardon power conferred upon me by Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, have granted, and by these presents do grant, a full, free, and absolute pardon unto Richard Nixon, for all offenses against the United States which he, Richard Nixon, has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period from July 20, 1969 through August 9, 1974.
Vietnam, 5th Cavalry, initiating new men.
We'll start out by singing them a little song. Oh, you're going home with a body bag, doo-dah, doo-dah. You're going home with a body bag, oh, doo-dah-day. Let's hear it. Shot between the eyes, shot between the thighs. You're going home with a body bag, oh, doo-dah-day.
The 5th Cavalry's mission, scouting and engaging the enemy, the same as it had been at Bull Run in the Civil War and in the Western Territories during the wars with the Indians. Find the enemy, make him expose himself, draw his fire, return the fire, at a cost. The day after the initiation, 5 men came back in body bags. The war in Vietnam lasted longer than our participation in World War I and World War II combined. It was time to come home. We were war-weary. There was little passion left for either war or peace. Hawks and doves had come together. They both wanted our boys out of Southeast Asia.
You belong to the same generation that is protesting at home. Do you feel as if you belong to those people?
Very much.
You do?
Very much. I wish they'd get us out of here. I really do.
When you write home and tell your wife about what you're doing, what do you tell her?
I'll write my wife and tell her what's happening as far as what I did today, you know. I flew and that's about it.
I ride home telling them what everybody else is doing.
I lie.
I lie too.
Don't tell me.
I mean, you gotta look at it from our point of view. Now, if you go down and you crash, and everybody gets out alive, nobody's hurt, that was a good week. So you write to them, well, Mom, I had a good week.
You volunteer for this kind of work? Why?
Yeah. Well, I was sitting in college, you know, just kind of cruising, having a good time, and all my friends are saying, war is bad. I thought, well, I got to find out for myself. And now that I'm here, and a few things have happened along the way, I want to go home now.
There had been years of secret negotiations, years of clandestine comings and goings. But just as America had become tired of the war, it had become tired of the efforts for peace. Finally, in '73, there was a formal European-style peace agreement. There was far less to it than met the eye.
William Rogers, Madame Bin, the foreign minister of the Provisional Revolution.
Put simply, the Vietnamese communists were not going to give up at the peace table what they had won on the battlefield. The Americans might withdraw from South Vietnam, the communists would not withdraw. That fact stood firm since 1969, in spite of secret or open negotiations. Now we know that except for certain minor points, the peace we accepted in '73 could have been signed in '69. In those 4 years, American forces suffered 70,000 casualties.
Here is the Secretary of State signing with a series of pens. He told us he was going to use quite a few pens today to sign.
In 2 secret letters, President Nixon promised that if the North Vietnamese began the war again, we'd come back and defend our ally with full force, with, as the president wrote, swift and severe retaliatory action. But we wouldn't come back. We'd renege. Everybody at this table would renege. The North Vietnamese waited to regroup and then started a military push. The South Vietnamese agreed to think about free elections, but they would not be held.
There you see Tran Van Lam of Saigon, the foreign minister.
As for the administration, it needed a public relations gesture.